Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Nature Folklore Sessions. It's 9th of May, 2021. Well, thank you all again for joining me for our weekly time of exploring nature-centered folklore, connecting this to your passions within your favorite sanctuary space, and expressing your inspired visions from your sanctuary through your poetry, writing, arts, crafts, performance, and problem solving. Now, today we're back into nature folklore format, and today the theme is fairy stories for May. And do tell me if you actually can hear me okay. Is there any of you on board? Let me know, because last week people were saying I was too quiet, but a session I had yesterday, they said I was too loud. So let's see if we can get a compromise. Anyway, let's move on. And the guest today, we've got Catherine McTrainer. He hasn't come on board yet, but it's delightful to have him. He's got a couple of poems for us. We've not had him on our sessions for a while. We've got At Last, and I hope she can come on board okay, Sherry Murphy, a regular who tunes in anyway. And at last this week, she's going to introduce us to her book, In the Service of the King. And I should have a wee bit of a picture of that. Here's a picture of Sherry there, who we'll get to meet at last. And there's her book there, In Service to the King. And the delight is joining us from India, despite all the heartbreaking challenges that's going on there, is poet Amit Daya. I'm going to have to get the pronunciation right. Amit Daya Badshah. I hope I got that right. I hope I got that close. We'll talk to you about that later. He's going to be on later. Now, he's going to kindly share a couple of poems with us, and I'll try to slip in some questions with an answer panel at the end. But we do have a lot going on today, and I know I'm going to go into some serious overtime, so I hope you can keep with us and enjoy what's coming up with this lovely lineup of guests we've got this afternoon. And as usual, letting you know that these folklore sessions and the Karakori Labyrinth Gardens here are brought to us largely due to you wonderful Patreon subscribers. And I know a lot of you tune in, and let's bring up the reminder, who is reluctant to show. There we go. And some subscribers are say watching today, and I do warmly thank you for your continued support, because this does ensure that I'm here each Sunday afternoon with the Nature Folklore, because it covers the subscription cost almost anyway. So let's see who's with us today. And thank you for joining in, because I know there was a muddle on Facebook where the show got bumped off and then bumped on again. We got Sharon McNichol, who's joined us. Thank you for being here, Sharon. Lovely. Thank you. And I know, as I say, the numbers might be low because I did get bumped off of Facebook for some reason. Definitely on the YouTube, okay. But I got that fixed a bit earlier today. But let's see, people will know they come along on Sunday and we'll pick up. So that's lovely. Thanks for being here. Oh, I see the numbers are coming up now anyway. So here we are. We're close to the cross quarter point here. Let's give you a chart, because people say, what's cross quarters? Let's see if you can work it out from that chart. And today, or well, anyway, last Wednesday, wasn't it? That it was the cross quarter point of Bealtaine, 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 whatever way you like to say it, whatever you call it. And cross quarter point this year was 7:36 a.m. last Wednesday here in Ireland. That would have been 2:36 a.m. Eastern on the USA, 1:36 Central, 36 minutes after midnight Mountain. And for you people that do watch it sometimes from the Pacific, it was 11:36 p.m. on your Tuesday evening. Now, the cross-quarter moment was also the midpoint of Taurus too. which is fascinating. I'm going to talk a bit about that, to think a bit later, because the connection to Pleiades. But Bealtaine is one of the 2 times of the year when it's said the veil between the 2 worlds is at the thinnest. And the other time is perhaps better known to you as Samhain, early November. And I think Samhain's probably better known and more celebrated due to the focus on the reverence of our ancestors, as well as sharing the end of the harvest and the trading and dealing with debts, and concern and reverence and support for our entry into the winter. But right now, this is the time of Hawthorn Blossom, when they start blossoming. Well, they're late this year. I took some photos outside where I am, and as you say, they're still in bud, but last year they were actually in flower on this date. But a lot of the blossoming is late this year. We've been well below average temperatures for a few weeks now. We have a good spell end of April, and that's why I'm inside and not outside in the tree labyrinth, in the willow ken, in the tree labyrinth today, which last year I was out there every Sunday, if you're tuned in last year. But today it's showering, and there's even been a thunderstorm just before I went on the air, so I hope we'll actually stay on the air. But so while Samhain is focused on reverence for ancestors, I feel that this Bealtaine time focuses on our reverence for our descendants and the people in life, either, descendants of the people in life that have been born, just been born, or they're not born yet. And amongst those of you joining us here today, are you enchanted by, any of you enchanted by those television dramas that are themed with mythology? I'm thinking here about the likes of the Vikings, the short run of the Camelot that there was, Britannia, and of course, Game of Thrones. And there's a scene from Britannia, excuse me, to explain what I'm talking about. Now, I find that their screen rating formats are very similar. I think they are anyway, because with each of these dramas, there's always lots of fighting and chopping off bits of anatomy, isn't there? And if there's no fighting, the cast then seem to have scenes of holding council meetings together to attempt to negotiate treaties to stop the fighting. But these meetings, they may be intruded by, just for the drama, they're intruded by visits from goddesses, ghosts, wild wizards and witches. And here's a scene from one of them, show roughly what I'm talking about. And then when these lads and lasses of mythology drama are not fighting and they're not in council, what are they doing? They're bunking, rumpy-pumpy, whatever you like to call it. And as you may read, listen, and watch those that are slain in these battle dramas or in the storytelling of the great fights of the ancient past, we may feel reverence for the Samhain coming upon us. And you may think that's actually a Samhain fire. That's actually a Bealtaine fire from Uisneach. It's one of their photos. But the slain in these dramas, they arouse visions within us, maybe. We feel and reflect on our ancestors, and that's why I relate that to Samhain. But for us to actually become descendants of these ancestors, and for us to be born and to appreciate our ancestors, there has to be bonking and rumpy-pumpy in these myth drama stories. Otherwise, descendants wouldn't happen, would they? We wouldn't be here today. So this is the time, what I'm pointing out, part of the Bealtaine celebrations has become a reverence of fertility, conception, and certainly an increase of the human race. And that's the Triskel womb symbol there for you. But Bealtaine is also a celebration of the appreciation of what's happening in nature all around us. There's the sprouting of seeds, the buzzleys pollinating the pollen. That's outside here. There's birds' eggs hatching and all kinds of new life that's growing. Bealtaine traditions, they focus on prayers, wishes, requests for good yields of fruit, veggies, and cereals, and everything to grow safe and be abundant for harvest. Now, also a wonderful time, as I say, it's a wonderful time for the bees and the pollinating insects to work with the abundance of pollen that's around, and how dandelions have turned to this. Maybe where you live, this is what's happening. Last week, I was showing you yellow dandelion flowers on the session. Now those flowers, they're looking like this. And there's an abundance of all kinds of pollen present, and there's a butterfly at work there. But this is also blessings for all the animals reared, that's going to be reared to be safe, and for our own health strength to be replenished and sustained right now and carry on through the summer. Now, as I say, a lot of people, they seem to reflect on this time as being a fire festival time. And there's a drone over Yushnik in the middle of the week. But as I pointed out last week, I believe the fire is only half of the vision of this time. And this time, especially at this time of year in Ireland, is when the sun truly warms the frost. The dew, we've had some late frost, and this is what's been going. So the sun is warming all this up on earth. And when the water on the flower petals and the stamens is warmed, the flowers then become much more fragrant. And when the flowers are fragrant, what happens? The pollinating by the bees and the buzzards increases, and fertility suddenly becomes much more alive. So today, rather than a fire festival and celebration of fire, I'm going to try and go the whole hog and try to focus mainly on what's happening at this season's time, with visions of sun, the fire, on all this heating water, and then what happens next. And of course, this includes water, frost and dew, and it helps to move the tree sap, the sap up in trees, and the sun also for photosynthesis. A bit of a chart to remind you what happens with photosynthesis. It gives you all that lovely fresh air to breathe in. And the water in the soil warms up, and that helps to germinate the seed and gets the crops going. We've been waiting to sow and get plants out in Ireland, and at last the frost has gone, and now we're suddenly able to do this. And many people will be like me and envision that, and with a belief that all this life is awakening at this Bealtaine time, and with this May warmth, starting off from what we may call the fairy realm. I got a couple of artists' impressions here of the fairy realm. So I like that one. That's a real cheeky one. So and this is why I tell the stories. I tend to link the fairy realm, as I say at the beginning. It's linking the folklore, the nature folklore, to your favorite sanctuary space, which I'm not out in today, but I hope you're able to get out to yours. But often the fairy story in Ireland, as you may be familiar with, has reference to the fairy race, the Tuatha De Danann. But I'm not going to go into the Tuatha De Danann very much today, because I go through that a lot on other sessions. A wee bit, but not much. But before I say more, let's take a break. Is Cathal here? I was going to have Cathal. Sherry's here. Hi, Sherry. Lovely to see you. Can you hear me?
You, John, yes. Can you
Can't hear you. You're silent.
Let me see what we can do about that. It said that my microphone was working.
No, can't hear you. I haven't got you muted here, and you haven't muted yourself.
No.
You haven't. Your microphone settings must be off. Anyway, I'll come back to you a bit later. Hope you get that sorted. Good to see you. And Cathal's not here, so maybe he'll come on a bit later. So sorry about that. We'll have to move on with what I get. God. But as I've said before, with the Tuatha De Danann story, is often told, the Tuatha De Danann is told to us by storytellers and even by historians that they were ancient people of observation. And it's told that they became skilled at configuring observation into geometry, mathematics, science, and art, and even advanced themselves into profound genetic engineering with animal breeding the way that their own ancestors themselves are responsible for, say, the creation of poultry, cattle, reindeer altered to have bigger antlers, and it just goes on and on. And also with the crops, quite familiar for bringing the grains over because they were settled farmers, getting grasses and somehow through genetic changes managing to get grains and other crop creation. That's Tuatha Dé Danann are told of as being a fairy race, but much of the storytelling about them is about battles, first with the Firbolgs, then the Fomorian Sea People, and then onto the sons of Mil, the Milesians, which they say come from Iberia, Spain, Portugal, that area. But as with the Tuatha Dé Danann, I'm going to cut out most of the story of the arrival of the sons of Mil, but briefly say that the Milesians arrived on the south coast of what's now called Erin or Eriu in these stories. It's said that the 6 sons of Mil arrived together with their ships, 30 ships that were crewed, and they tried to land on what we call Munster now, and that was said to be at the time under the Firbolg rule. And they had a regional chief at that time, McGroin, and his wife apparently was named Eriu. But somehow word got back to Tara of this armada that was arriving. So the men of the Tuatha Dé Danann, they galloped to the Munster coast, preparing for supposedly one of their battles. But their shamans performed some wizardry. I'm not going to the story of that, but it whipped up storms to try and prevent the Milesians landing. But one of the sons of Mil, Amagim, who's become quite famous, recited the magical poem that calmed the sea. Now, it's worth Googling Amagin, the Song of Amagin. Go on the Google sometime, get the Song of Amagin. See if you can pick up the Lisa Goddard version. She sings it with Dead Can Dance. Absolutely beautiful. Anyway, from that story, only 3 of those sons of Mil out of the 6 managed to get their boats to the Erin shore. And there are wonderful Gothic stories of what happened to the other 3 that didn't quite make it. But as I say, I'm not going to tell them today. But somehow, even the 3 sons that did get ashore with about 15 boats of Milesians, they were a minority with the large group of Tuatha Dé Danann menfolk. But the story at this point is that the Milesians did not actually overcome the Tuatha Dé Danann through a battle. And this is where I'm going to get onto topic now. The story of what happened next, I find, it's actually quite vague. But as I understand it, and I brought this up on the folklore sessions before, the Milesians were tree people. They were people that were ancestors of the Gaels, the people we call the Gaels, the Milesians, it's said, were their ancestors. And the Gaelic language, or the Gaelic language today, is said to have descended from a language that the Milesians brought here. But this Gaelic origins is not scientifically confirmed. Yet I find the early language story is a real joy for our imagination and understanding of worthy things. And it was a tree language, as I brought up a few times. So the Milesian language is told as being a tree language that evolved in the Ogham. And of course, the many wannabe shamans and druids use Ogham as a valuable divination tool for their visions, for their prophecy, and why not? I do host around 5 national folklore sessions each year presenting different stories of the Ogham, and I look forward to the next one. The next one's going to be quite different because I intend to introduce a new angle of how the 20 Ogham symbols that we use today, the main ones, may have actually become corrupted in their translation by the medieval scribes. But that's for another day. So I look forward to sharing that with you here. Anyway, now to keep to the idea of the Milesians arriving with this tree language strung together using trees as symbolism, I'm going to break for a moment before continuing what happened with them and perhaps tell you the origin of fairy stories as we know them. As I say, this is fairy stories for me, and you may wonder, where the hell is these fairy stories to me gone? Let's see what you have to say. I've still got no cattle here. So I hope he's okay. We've got Sharon. Charlene's here. Hello from Whidbey Island, Pacific Northwest there. Lovely. Good to see you here, Charlene. You're coming in through Facebook. Wonderful this time. Tina Rock, Windy Mountain out there near the border with Leitrim. Lovely. Kimberly Kilbansky from Boston. Lovely to have you. And the lovely Donna Johnson, who never fails, here from New Mexico. And Davina there amongst the lovely woodlands of Virginia. And she's really getting the accent there now. And Claire Kelly, lovely to see you here. Sharon, you can hear Sherry. That's interesting that you heard and I didn't. Let's hope when we get her back that we'll get her. I don't know why her volume was off. All the controls here. If she comes on again, we have this amazing customer support. We have a little button on the corner here, and they come up instantly. They're like a jack-in-a-box, and they get me sorted out within seconds. So if she's here, we'll check on the volume anyway. And Thomas could hear Sherry. So it sounds like as if it could have been a StreamYard thing, which is very unusual. But as I say, I can get the jack-in-the-box on the corner here to come and sort us out, should we not get Sherry. It'd be a delight. I hope she can make it, because it'd be delightful. In fact, the next guest is not here either, so I'm going to have to move on. So, oh dear, we're not doing very well with our guest today. They're having a trouble getting here and logging on. Anyway, we'll get to someone soon. We've still got Amit here, who's patiently waiting, which is absolutely delightful. But the story I'm going to share right now, it's a little bit vague. Well, its origins are vague, as I don't think it appeared in any of the annals and the masters. Yet it stayed on within the realm of local folklore. And a few stories related to this are actually from Kerry children. There's a lovely site, ducas.ie, where you can see these handwritten stories from the children. A wonderful collection of folk tales. And to me, they're much more valuable than the stuff in the annals, because there's a bit of a hierarchy that brought the annals together. They were definitely done for prestige, whereas the children's stories, they're very much localized, even though the translations would have changed over the millennia. Now, this story, it starts with a bush, and a bush-like tree, actually, and it's told of as being a mother of life tree of the Tuatha Dé Danann. And boy, this sounds awfully like the mother tree in Avatar, the movie, doesn't it? But anyway, and maybe the Avatar got this idea from here. But this bush tree was somehow the life and wisdom source of the Tuatha Dé Danann. And they had grafted cuttings from this tree and taken it and grown it in their localities around there, where there were Firbolg and Tuatha Dé Danann chieftains, all around there and where the chieftains are. So this would be their wisdom tree that kept their stamina and their wisdom alive. Now, the mother tree of all these grafted trees is said to have been grown in a valley of what is now the Mish Mountains, which is east of the Dingle Peninsula, and not that far from Charlie. And our sons of Mills, who by legend had descended from a grandfather who was half human and half hazel tree, and a mother who had morphed from a reindeer, they could relate how the power of this bush-like tree was on the living and lives of the Tuatha Dé Danann people. Now, it's not clear if this bush tree was a hawthorn or a hazel or some other tree species. But for the Milesians to defeat the strength and power of the Tuatha Dé Danann, because the three of them with their little fleet were just in small numbers in comparison to the Tuatha Dé Danann, they found this bush. Somehow they got to this bush and they set it on fire until this whole tree of strength and vision and wisdom of the Tuatha Dé Danann was burnt to an ash. So with this mother tree gone, the Tuatha Dé Danann were defeated. But then, and this is in the annals now, there came the truce. An agreement was made on how the Milesians and the Tuatha Dé Danann could live together in partnership. And from the suggestion of the crafty Amagin of the famous poem, the Milesians got the upper part of the world and the Tuatha Dé Danann got the underworld, the underground. But as the Milesians were said to be forest people, they were probably not, and it said they weren't very good as settled field farmers like the Tuatha Dé Danann were. It wasn't their culture. So without the Tuatha Dé Danann present, it seemed they were not very good at crop growing and animal rearing, and stories are told that they almost starved. So it's told that they then called upon the underworld Tuatha Dé Danann race, who had now transferred back into being a fairy race, a she race, and the meal called upon them all together, the people above ground, below the ground, to unite together and help them understand the crops and the seasons, and so they could become farmers. And storytellers love to tell of the calling of the Tuatha Dé Danann she, who telling about the entry into old Stone Age megalithic constructions. We have Carrickeel here with their megalithic cairns that you climb into. Newgrange is obviously very, very famous. So is Loughcrew and Carramore, just outside Sligo town there. But just as the Tuatha Dé Danann are told in story as having revered respect to their goddesses, gods, ancestors, all this through entering into these stone structures. The Milesians are told in story as being tree people and being the original Gaels, may have been as foreign to these ancient stone structures as they were to the settled farming. But even so, the stories of honouring and the reverence of these 4 annual seasonal celebrations are with us today. Imbolc, Bealtaine, Lucena, and so on. And this all seems to link up together through storytellers. They link up and tell of these celebrations, and sometimes they talk of the firbolgs that brought these celebrations together, because Uisneach in Meath, which was originally called Mead, the centre of Ireland, was said to be something that was how the firbolgs divided what's area or Ireland into the regions where the various clans of the firbolgs raised themselves until they faced the Tuatha Dé Danann. So there's some storytellers say that these 4 celebrations, the cross-quarter times, happened in their time. Others say this was something that was brought together through this truce and unity between the Milesians and the Tuatha Dé Danann. Different storytellers, different stories. So perhaps that's a little confusing, but really I don't think that's important, actually. The interesting response to us, for us, I think, these days, is what was caused by the spirits of the Tuatha Dé Danann, and today in the celebrations we talk about the She and the Fae. Now this includes the increased number of hawthorn trees that were pushed up from the underworld, especially into stone fairy rings. If you go to fairy rings with tour guides, you'll see loads of hawthorns come up. So you get all kinds of stories saying that people that used to live within those fairy rings, that the spirits are now part of the She, and the She are protecting them with the hawthorns growing in them. And there's some of them, before the archaeologists came along and kind of tidied them up for the tourists, they were actually over and around these stone cairns as well. But sometimes these hawthorn trees have actually, shame I haven't got all my pictures up, because I've got some lovely pictures of this, because I limited, I ran out of time, so I've not got the picture gallery I usually have. But the hawthorn trees have split. They've come up and they split and crumbled some of those ancient stones in the stone circles, and even on the outskirts of the stone cairns. But the Milesians, in any one sense, the last thing they're going to do is burn down a bush. Things were different now after this truce. You don't go around burning hawthorn bushes, because there's a fear that if you do, there'll be no harvest, there'll be sickness that will bring down and wipe out the animals, and the sickness will wipe out a family and even a clan. A bit of deja vu in a bit there, unfortunately. But the Christian church, they seem to have locked into this as well, because their teachings have changed the story a little bit. They've included converting pushing our belief that nothing of the hawthorn tree should ever be brought into our homes, and encouraged that it's wise to have hawthorns actually growing close outside. Don't bring them into the home, but have them growing close to you outside. And this will prevent the evil spirits and the wicked fairies, because once the Christian church was out about, fairies weren't the people's friends anymore. They were wicked. They were trickery and mustn't get into our homes. So the whole, I suppose, bit of religion scaremongering as they do. However, the burning bush from the Milesians' arrival story seems to have been reenacted in a way for Bealtaine, and I better start getting some. I do have some pictures up. Let's get you going on a little bit here. Fairy realm, because I haven't got the number. I really rushed this up. So you got, I've got some stuff that I'm going to talk about. Anyway, these stories, I think, of the fire stories, they perhaps go back very much into medieval times. That's another one that's up at Ushnik. But these Bealtaine fires, they're now a fallen deadwood from the land or from the shorelines, and they're cleared up. But the one thing I guarantee in these fires, like at Ushnik, etc., they won't be of, there's a nice one there of a sort of celebrating fire thrower. But the one thing you can be sure, these big fires, the Bealtaine fires, they're not going to include hawthorn wood. Anyway, a Bealtaine fire is considered for enhancing cleansing and vitality rather than taking away the power. I think they learned from the Tour de Don, and what the hawthorns, what the hazels were there for. And also, to be considered, these ancient people, they didn't have clocks. So they certainly wouldn't have had calendars. So how could they know when these cross-quarter times are actually happening? Well, there was a hierarchy. A lot of people tried to talk of the past and ancient equality, but it just wasn't there. There was definitely a hierarchy. The Tour de Don, they said they set up colleges. Certainly medieval times, they set up universities. Even the ones called the Druids before had these universities of these people that we call Druids and shamans. They learned and understood the charts so that they could light the fire according to their charts, their charting, their observations. And they would do all this, learn from college. There would be a hierarchy of learned ones, and of course the people on the farms, they'd be feeding them and sheltering them. And this is thought to be the relationship after the Tour de Don had actually conquered the Furbolgs. So the Furbolgs ended up being the Tour de Don farmers to serve them in the same way, because not only were they the fairy race, they were the wise ones. So you've got this hierarchy. Anyway, the fires would be lit at these places of council that were important to these druid shaman types, where they held court in places typical, Ushnik and Tara. And the fires would be also prepared on high places all over Erin, all over Ireland, and ready for lit. So that when these leading fires were lit, the ones on the horizon, they've lit the fires, let's light ours. And so boom, 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 boom. It's like dominoes, all these fires would lit. And that gave the message over the island that it's celebration time. And everybody would know whether it's the start of Imbolc, Bealtaine, Lunasa, or Sawan. But people, they also, another tradition, I think it started medieval times, get to a picture, they love to jump the fires, and people do that today. And I got a couple of jumping fire pictures here. There we go. No, that's the twin fires. I'm coming to that in a minute. There is someone jumping the fires, and people still do that, supposedly to enhance away any bad spirits that are with them, general cleansing. But actually, it's more likely they do that to act the maggot, to impress the girls and boys that they wish to mate with at Bealtaine. But I do actually have a picture somewhere, I think, of a couple jumping. Let's see if I can get the couple jumping. Maybe I didn't get that one up. No, I didn't. Ah, here we go. There we go. There's a couple. So these people had already done their matchmaking and they'd done it together. But I think it was done very much as a bit of still is done as a bit of a prowess thing. Anyway, then I was talking about the twin fires. There's some twin fires there. And this became a later tradition to drive the cattle through. And I explained this ritual last Sunday, along with these fires being combined with the drinking at the well. So again, going back to what I was talking about earlier, about the sun warming up the water, this is a sort of a larger ceremony in that. Anyway, I think people easily stop at half the Bealtaine celebrations because of these fires lit at these higher places to tell people the time. But people may stop there, like I often say around Easter time. People kind of stop with a lot of celebrations, even stop with a lot of choices when they get to that crucifixion point. They forget about the resurrection. So again, it's a reminder and a recommendation. Think of Bealtaine as being the sun warming up the water, sun heating, sun warming the water. So this year, for us, it was heating up the frosts, heating up the heavy dew on the flower petals, enhancing fragrances, enhancing the pollination, and warming the soil. We're getting the plants out, and sap's running. I'm just reminding all the points. And the air clearing through photosynthesis in the sun. Summer's all on its way. We got all this fragrance, all this warmth. Well, not quite this year. And the one thing this is said to do is warmth and enchant the lusty effects of wombs. So, since medieval times, we got Sherry. We haven't got any other guests that have come here. But since medieval times, people in Ireland, they have, as I pointed out, they've associated the she and the fairies with trickery. And so some May rituals seem to have turned from a focus on enchanting the land and the flow of nature to actually defending us from the flow of fairies. First, the church encouraged the snakes and serpents of the underworld to be bad, that was bad news. And so for Imbolc and St. Patrick's, we got this thing of, drive the snakes away. So suddenly we're scared of snakes and the underworld. And then now it moved on to the mischief of the fairies that we should be protected from. And through folklore stories, it's said that an additional demand, going back to the Danann fairy race of the She, was for not all the land to be cultivated and be farmland. This was coming from the She, who were farmers. Originally, their own ancestors were farmers, but now in the underworld, part of the truth was insisting that some of the land be left wild, and this wild land to be near water, by the wells, by the lochs, by the lakes, by the pools, by the sacred rivers. And this is where they needed and wanted their own wild flowers to grow. And without this wildness, we're told there would be no fertility on earth. We'd not have crops for food or food to feed animals that we're rearing. Now, I'm going to talk more about this when we do the rewilding and biodiversity session. We got one next week and then another one 3 weeks later. But I love how the Maybush, this hawthorn tree, has transformed from being burned to now the hawthorn is honored. And I talked about this last Sunday. There was the Nuts in May rhyme. If you remember me going through that and its origins. What I may not have mentioned clearly was the actual difference between a knot and a knot, as I say, it's mispronunciation. I even have a problem with this one because it's nut. If I can do it in a posh voice, nut. Because when I say nut, that's me saying nut. Nut is almost like not. So the two get mixed up. But what's the difference between a nut and a posy? And today we think of a posy as a bunch of flowers. It's a May Day celebration as part of the rituals at this time. But once upon a time, these posies, they were actually bunches of healing herbs. And again, I'm sorry I haven't got the pictures for this, but healing herbs for this spring season, because we've got the new thyme out, the rosemary, the sage, and even there's still some dandelions around, there's cowslips. So posies for these, all these can be healing herbs in some way. And maybe when they're out in the next day or two, the hawthorn flowers as well can be bunched in these posies, as long as we don't take them indoors. Now that leads to another children's rhyme that you might be familiar with. Ring a ring of roses, a pocket full of posies. I'm not going through the rest of it, but those posies in that rhyme, I'm absolutely sure was a bunch of herbs to try and ward off the plague. So let's see, you're making some comments at the moment as we're moving along here, and we haven't got, let's see, there's John Crossan, greetings to you all, love to see someone from YouTube there, and good day, John Davina. We could hear Sherry, but you weren't able to on the end. And I'm going to try Sherry out in a very short time. And it's good news, because that shows me that we're going to be able to sort that out. Anyway, thank you for your comments there. Let me know. Now, I was going to play a version of the Wild Flowers, of a Hawthorn story of the Wild Hunt. But as the time's moving on, we got two very precious guests. So what I'm going to actually do myself, and I've got my, let's get this on clap. What I intend to do, since we're moving on, I'm going to give the subscribers a bit of a treat. I'm actually going to, those video clips I was going to show you today, for the subscribers, I've never done this, and I should be doing this well before now. It's going to be unique content up on your Patreon. So all the subscribers on Patreon, you'll be getting these little video clips of stories I'm not including today. Anyway, let's bring the next guest. And people were saying they could hear Sherry, and let's see if I can hear Sherry now. Here's Sherry Murphy. How are you doing there, Sherry? Can we hear you?
I'm well, John. Can you hear me?
Oh, goodness me, yes, loud and very clear this time. Now, with Sherry, last year's here to talk about her In the Service of the King, which is her book, and you can get it anywhere. And it's the wonderful thing about this is in the reviews all over the internet. You can, where is it? There you go. You'll see it's got lots of 5 stars. In fact, I haven't seen anything less than 5 stars. It seems to be a thrill for anybody to read it. It's a multi-leveled novel. It's like stories within stories. And as I say, totally flooded with great reviews because of the mystery and the edge of the seat of this. And of course, people say, why isn't this a film? Why isn't this a series of drama series? And
oh, I would love it. I would love it.
And of course, though writing as fiction, it's very folklore rich. Tour de Donners there, the dragons, multi-realms, ancient healers, quests. So, Sherry, it's such a delight to have you here.
It's such a delight to be here, John. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And give us it's lovely. At last, we get to see and hear you. Can you give us an introduction to your book, please?
Well, yes. This is my book, In the Service of the King, and the sequel will be out this summer. The reason I wrote this book, I didn't go to college when I was younger. I raised my 3 sons pretty much on my own, and I saved up going to college and grad school until much, much later in life. Actually, I just finished grad school about 3 years ago. While I was in college, I heard someone say something about the dreadful fairy race. And I was like, no, they're not dreadful. They're healers, and they're fabulous, and they're wonderful, and we need to learn about them. So I had an assignment, which was to write 100 pages about anything that I found interesting. So I wrote the 100 pages, which ended up being the beginning of this book. And my professors were literally one of the professors who was normally very stoic and very prim and proper. He actually picked me up and twirled me around and he said, "This is fabulous. This needs to be a book." So then I started writing it, you know, I continued with it, much to their pleasure. I mean, they were very delighted that I decided to do that. So another interesting thing about the book, when I was looking for a cover for the book, I found the this image by John Duncan. He did this in, I don't know if you can see this, it's very bright in here, but
Oh, you're very good.
He did this image and swears that he was under a fairy spell when he did it. And the name of the image on the book is The Return of the She. So I felt that that very aptly portrayed my book. And, you know, thankfully it was on public domain, so I was able to use it. But another thing that transpired around the same time that I was writing, I was studying Chaucer and learning about the pilgrimage. And I became obsessed with the pilgrimage and decided that the fairy race was going to be an underwater race of healers. And they were going to be on a pilgrimage as well on land and sea. So that's pretty much how it came about.
Oh, that's one thing I didn't get to do. Why have I got the wrong? I'm almost saying bye-bye at the moment. Excuse me while I get a change with that. I got to do a change on our background because it's almost saying bye-bye. We're not going bye-bye yet. I'll just get the art changed around a bit. Let's put something that's more appropriate. There we go. We'll get rid of that for the minute. And we got Just You, which is absolutely excellent. Now, the one thing I didn't do, I never got any I didn't get any website information up. You have a website on this? On the book?
Just sherrymurphy.com.
Okay, sherrymurphy.com. Sorry, I haven't got that in, but we'll put it in the comments, and you put it in the comments as well, Sherry, since you're here. That would be lovely to get this out. You were saying about the sequence.
The sequel?
Is there anything sequel? Can you actually give us a little bit on the sequel?
It's at the publishers right now. They're working on the edits. The edits should be ready to be sent to me for approval any day now. And that book will be out this summer. And it just is the continuance of this fairy race that I wrote about in the Service of the King.
Wonderful. Now, you did spend a fair bit of time in Ireland. I assume some of that was research for plots and landscapes for that.
It actually wasn't. I was invited to come over there and do art shows in Dingle Bay. And I was working at the time with some musicians. So some of the art galleries in Dingle Bay wanted to display my art along with the American jazz musicians. So that's why I moved there, and that didn't end up happening. But yeah, I lived on a cottage right at the edge of the Tralee Golf Course.
Oh, goodness.
And, we would go outside at night, late at night, and play our saxophones out onto the water. I was right on the water, and the whales would call back to us. It was magical, very, very magical experience. And I do miss living there, although I love down East Maine. I love it here. It's amazing, but I do always miss Ireland.
I know from when I went to Maine from Scotland, I thought how similar this is from the West.
It is so similar.
Scotland. It's as if I hadn't got on the plane. I wondered if a plane had turned around and dropped me off somewhere I wasn't familiar with. But anyway, you were pretty close to where I was talking about the Milesians setting up the sort of bush of wisdom. So there might be some inspiration from the ashes there. How did you get your inspiration, and what places? How did you manage to piece together all those different plots?
Well, I lived in Cape Breton Island. I had a farmhouse there. Excuse me. And that was in the Scottish Gaelic community. And then as you know, I lived in Ireland and now here, and I've lived in Connecticut and New Mexico. So it was sort of a combination of all of the places that I've lived. And I'm always so inspired. Wherever I go, I feel so enthusiastic and so inspired, which I think we should be. You know, it's a new place, so much to explore.
Yeah.
So that was my inspiration. And also, you're an inspiration, John, because, you know, being able to learn these myths and these stories is amazing. There aren't very many actually out there teaching, you know, truths about these stories.
Oh, that's very kind of you, because I suppose, well, I've been at this since I was 6 years old, as I've often told on the past things. So there are lots of people teaching, and I must admit they challenge what I say, but I just stick to what I do, because it is a lot from the storytellers. It was what was passed down to me. And of course, with the mythology, it's a lot of fiction. But the whole point, as I always say at the beginning, I find it's a lovely instrument that if you take these to your favorite sanctuary, and I encourage outdoor sanctuary, which is embarrassing being in the kitchen today, because this is what's happened to me, is when there's questions, play around with this mythology, just like you. All these visions come, all these prophecies, you write it down, you paint them, you might make a sculpture, or you got some engineering puzzle, and suddenly it all comes to you. And even with the type of book you got, to me, it'd be like the jigsaw of all the plots coming together. Exactly. And suddenly you see it as the whole. A bit like how Einstein invented stuff. He didn't experiment, he just saw visions and tried to follow the vision. So
a lot of
I think
was
that's lovely.
Coming from dreams as well. I had so many dreams.
So you really got the ball rolling of what this is about. So I thank you for that. Hold on, we may well, since half of the guests haven't turned up today, we may well be able to fit in a question and answer session, a panel session. So it was lovely to talk to you, and we'll get with that very shortly. Thank you, and we'll have you here very shortly again. And there's some hand clapping going on from Amit. We got on very shortly as well. But as I say, I haven't got my short videos on the Wild Hunt. I was going to also show a short video of my story of a priest and the fairies. But what I'm going to do is to say for the subscribers, the patrons, they're going to get those, and they're going to get a lot more over the course of the year, plus the course itself. And then I'll kind of do the plug again. That's where you go if you want to get those videos more. Boy, am I pushy today. I'm so I don't like doing the marketing stuff, but it does keep us going. So I hope you don't mind me bringing that sort of thing up. So it's about time. As I say, we got one more brilliant guest. He's been patiently waiting. He was here half an hour early. It's very unique for us because our next guest, he's lived with, well, he lives in what's now, as we know, a very challenged India. And joining us for India for a couple of May-themed poems, from what I read somewhere, and Amit Dahir Bacha, I'm going to check up with you. How am I getting on with the pronunciation there? And I was reading a poet for at least 25 years, been part of the Delhi poets community for at least 20 years. And so here he is. Let's try again. Amit Dahir Bacha. How am I doing with the pronunciation? You say it.
Doing better than my mother. She said the name was completely pretentious and impossible to pronounce.
What does it actually mean? What does your name mean?
It means, I come from a state called Haryana, which is northwest India. We are, my community are farmers and soldiers. So one of them commanded cavalry in the army of a king, a peasant king. During the time of the Mughal, the Muslim rulers of India, and so they actually captured Delhi from the Mughals. And what Dahiya Badshah means is those Dahiyas who defeated the emperor. My ancestors were all cavalry soldiers.
Ah, absolutely fascinating. Now you've got, as you were saying, you've got 2 seasonal poems for us. I captured one of yours from a poetry group. So would you like to share the poems with us right now?
Yeah,
That'd be absolutely lovely.
After listening to you, John, and Mrs. Murphy, what I've learned is that there are remarkable similarities in our legends and folklore between the Irish and the people of India.
Of course, but a lot of those.
Sorry
to butt in there.
If you take the example of fairies and elves and gnomes, I think what happens is that you are imbuing life into everything around you. In India, we make them into gods. So you have snake gods, you have monkey gods. It's exactly the same as fairies and elves. It's the same. It's the same spiritual attitude. You know, you are either a spiritual people or you're not. And so the spiritual character of the Irish and the Indian people is what comes out to me from your presentation today.
That's very true. There's a lot of stories in Ireland have actually been translated from the stories from India, from very ancient India. So what you're saying, it's lovely to hear that because it makes total sense. We stole them from you.
The total pantheon of Indian gods is about 800,000.
Yes.
There are 800,000 gods. So there are parts of India where every stone, every tree, every branch is a god, is a spiritual entity. There's a place called the Upper Bhavani Plateau in South India, and the tribals who live there are wonderful people called the Todas. When they go down to a stream to get water, they come back by another way because they believe that in nature, to plant your foot in the same place twice is to colonize it. They try and avoid stepping onto the same place twice.
That's actually quite a tradition in a lot of Scotland as well.
Okay. Yeah, I spent some time in Scotland and I loved it. It was wonderful. I walked the West Highland Way both ways, from Glasgow to Fort William and then from Fort William to Glasgow.
Oh, brilliant.
I might be the only Indian who's ever done that, I think.
Did you go to Stornoway? Did you ever get to Stornoway? Before you go on, and now you're on, I must take this opportunity to tell you the story there. What happened? I think it was the turn of about the early 1900s, and there were people coming in from India for the cotton and woolen industry, and they got to Glasgow, and some had the initiative. The people out in the Highlands and Islands didn't have the cotton goods that they could get from India, and they could sell at a good price. So they went door to door around the Highlands and Islands, and these Indian people, they're bringing stuff to the crofters they'd never seen, and they loved it. They thought it was the best thing that happened. So the relationship was incredible. Anyway, eventually, one of the people who was doing this, he ended up in Stornoway, found the people so remarkable and so inclusive that he started gradually bringing his family there. And in Stornoway, about half the population in Stornoway is Indian ancestors. But the funny thing is, they've lost their Hindu language. They're all Gaelic speakers. And they're actually more fluent. They've preserved the old Gaelic language, which the rest of the island have lost. So if you want to learn Gaelic in Stornoway, in the Outer Hebrides, you go into this Punjab area to learn your Gaelic, which I think is a beautiful story of transition.
But there are so many words from India that are part of the Scottish language. Take kedgeree, for instance. Kedgeree.
Yes.
Now it's an Indian dish called khichdi, in which it's a one-pot meal, and you put everything into it: the lentils, the rice, the vegetables. It's delicious. It's very nice.
It is.
In Scotland, it's called kedgeree. And I was very pleased to discover it.
And we put the herring in. It's
Yeah.
it's an excuse for herring and
Yeah.
kippers.
The kippers. That's right. That's right.
Yes.
So, no, I had a wonderful time in Scotland. I was in Maybole with a family called the Kerr. They're
Of
sheep
course.
farmers. They're sheep
Mhm.
farmers in Maybole, and just a stone's throw from the cottage of Burns. From the
Right.
cottage of Burns. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Um,
definitely a name of the area. Anyway, we
so
better get on with the poems. We could
okay.
talk
So
for
the
hours
first
with
poem,
you.
I'm going to read you two nature poems from India. And
Lovely.
the first one is from South India, where the mountains, unlike North India, where they are sharp and jagged, the mountains are rounded and curved. And the tribals who live there, the Toda tribals, believe that they are living on the bosom of their mother goddess. These are blue mountains, and they're called the Nilgiris. Nilgiri means blue mountain. Yeah?
Hmm.
Can you hear me clearly?
Oh, very. Yes. You're excellent.
Great. Thank you. The Nilgiri Mountains. Nilgiri Mountains, vast, eternal, blue-bosomed, maternal. We are come to adore the essence of all that was before. Prodigals can't see, so we must seek, with tired minds and eyes grown weak. The milk of life flow over your breast, in Shola stream and glade and nest. Somewhere in here lies an umbilical cord, cut by wire, word and sword. Over 20 millennia or so ago, as we stole and fled from nature's door. Now the seed of time and grain is spent, and with harvests of thorn, the land is rent. To seek forgiveness, to thieves return, our sins go on, but still we yearn to raise an offering of sweat to the height of a hill. To raise an offering of sweat to the height of a hill, to touch a high mountain meadow with the greening of will, to taste a sun-dancing stream with the thirst of ages, to pick a small perfect flower and read it like pages, to offer warm breath to a cold morning star, to take one perfect moment and not stretch it too far.
Oh, wonderful. Carl, you say
Thank
it so
you.
beautifully.
And the second poem is set in North India, in Kashmir, which is considered by many heaven on earth. We had a war there in 1999, and this was written just before the war. It was the last full moon night and the last snowfall. And you know how it is during the fall of snow that you have the most hushed time on earth, because the snow absorbs all sound. And it was a full moon night in a place called Gulmarg, and it was snowing. And this was the last snowfall and full moon before the war. It's called the Kargil War with Pakistan. And I heard the alarm call of a deer, and I walked out into the night in the open, and it was beautiful, beautiful. There was this huge moon, and I crafted this poem called "Moon Drenched in Gulmarg." Who wrote this sheet of music? Perfect notes serene. The night is dark and velvet. The snow is silver sheen, and snowy crags in counterpoint descend to join the green. Wave on wave of forest underlines a score. And if this leaves you breathless, then wait, for there is more. See how nature sings in harmony. How I love the sweet plain song. How I love the starry aria, the music that plays on. The stream and insects sing chorus. A leopard a deep bass grumble. A singing stag, the sharp high notes, a cloud, a steady rumble. Now somewhere in this symphony, a touch of opera. the big cat takes the singing stag beneath a starry candelabra. The sight and sound are just too much. They flood hearing and vision. The great big cat keeps dining on past midnight's intermission. But through it all, low notes and high, silver streams, star-sequenced sky, God who loves this music too, sends shooting stars to bless Kashmir as she sings a sweet, sad song of pain and happiness. Thank you.
Oh, goodness me. Absolutely stunning. What a treasure to have you on today. That's thank you, Amit.
Oh, sorry. Is the 10 minutes up? Oh,
well, you can have a wee encore. What I will say is the rest. I'm going to bring Sherry back up in a minute, as well as yourself. Those of you watching, we are running on the overtime, but I see there's still plenty of you there. If you, this is going to be question and answers session. So certainly anything you'd like to ask with beautiful poetry there from India. Sherry there with beautiful in the service of the king and what she does. Get those comments in and we'll talk about them. And Amit, do you actually have a website or books out that we can refer to?
I have 20 collections published. I'm waiting for the 21st to come out.
All right.
The last one was called The Thirsty Word. And the next one is called Unsquaring the Circle.
Right. Now,
it is delayed by this COVID. It was supposed to be out last January, but I hope it'll come out in the next 2-3 months.
Right. Yeah, that does hold things up, unfortunately. If you can actually punch in the links to that or send them to me so we can share them on the thread, that would be wonderful, because I think people, after hearing you, would just want to know more. They just want to know and hear more. But anyway, thank you. An encore from yourself of another poem. That'd be beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Amit.
I have a tiny poem called The Trout that I wrote in Scotland. That's when I caught my first trout. And can you still hear me clearly?
Oh, you're very good. You've been great all the way along.
The Trout. Beneath the weeping willow tree, beside the burbling brook, the waters sing their song to me. I reach for pen and book. But the song of the stream is hard to sing in open verse or sonnet. In rhyme and line you cannot cast enough light upon it. But still, in even song and half twilight, I cast and take a trout in flight. We pant and struggle in the golden light till life and death turns misty night. The stream, it says one thing at last, I think I understand. Eternal is ephemeral when nature is at hand.
Ah, fabulous. That's absolutely brilliant. I'm going to bring Sherry back on. Get your questions in here with people. The comments that we got here. Tina Rock is absolutely enthralled. Beautiful poetry there. I called you Anita at first glance, but she called you Amit later on. There you go. Poetry and stories enthralled. And then Sherry, thank you for beautiful poetry. And there's a heart being thrown there by Sheila. And then Thomas will actually post this comment way back, giving us a little insight, because I think he's closer from where I was talking about religion. And it's like Tree of Life, the archangel that makes a beneficial relationship with the Fae.
Yeah.
The sea green. That's another variation, a localized story. So please, those of you there, and it does look as if, the signal's getting a little weak. I'm getting I hope you can hear it. Signal's fading. I hope you're okay. Come back, signal. I see. Oh, it's coming back. Great. We had a bit of a glitch there for a second. So, anyone else with questions? It's been beautiful having Amit and Sherry at last. And I hope we'll get both of you back at some point. And all the best to you with the challenges in India there, Amit. It's such an honor to have had you here, and especially turning up almost hours before I got going. I was almost running around in my pajamas when Amit turned up. So it's okay. So thank you again, both of you, Amit and Sherry.
Thank you for having me, John. I really appreciate it.
And there doesn't seem to be any questions. I bet a lot of people are going to be watching as they usually do in the evening. Some people have already told me I'm doing other things during this afternoon. They're going to watch this evening. I'm on in the afternoon, one out of tradition, because we, before the COVID, we'd had people round at this time. And also the internet signal was usually at our best, and now it is starting to fade away. So it's great that we got you in during that time. So thank you both again. Thank you. Oh, that's wonderful. I trust you enjoyed our guests, even though the two that we did get turn up, even three that didn't turn up, but we'll get them on another time, I suppose. So any more comments from you before we let go? I've got some kind of glitch notice that doesn't really count for me now. Any more comments from you? I would like to say I'm going to send the exclusive comment to you when I can. I'm going to tell you what's coming up now. I got some wee pictures for that. So coming up in Nature Folklore Sessions next week, I couldn't find the picture for it, but next week is biodiversity in the soil and our connections to this. So there's going to be some folklore in that, some underground folklore. I know there's some regular viewers from Mexico who are going to, I think from Mexico anyway, there's going to be a presentation on microgreens and some lovely folklore around microgreens of all things next week. So we're going to have a real mixture. So it's going to be a jolly time. Hands-on stuff plus folklore. We got the whole mix. And then the following Sunday, the 23rd of May, we got water folklore. That's really going to be folklore rich. And that's going to be full, hopefully, of enlightenment. I'll definitely ask Sarah Humble and people that she knows, see how they're getting on with their wells and the restoration of wells. She's got a lovely document out on that at the moment. Excuse me. And then 30th of May, it's rewilding our mind and spirit. So it combines some of the practical and inspiration with a bit of encouragement coaching. So it's really more about your sanctuary and your application to it, as well as what's around you. And I talked about there was the call of the Fae, call of the She, to keep some wild so they can come and bring the life to our crops. So any more comments before I go? Because I've really enjoyed today. I've enjoyed our fabulous guests, and I hope you have. And thank you again to our amazing guests. We've got Sherry and Amit. And if you're watching, a lot of you, it looks to be watching this evening or tomorrow, certainly the archives of these videos, please keep commenting here, because I come back and answer. I do return and answer comments quite often. So you can subscribe to the bell icons on YouTube and Facebook. I'll be reminded of the details of the next Nature Folklore Sessions. So from me, it's wishing you a wonderful week full of lovely inspirations, wonder, enchantments. So until next Sunday, everyone there, everyone around us, please play well, keep well. Thank you for being with us. So bye-bye.